We adults, we're not allowed to have fun anymore, are we? It's not really socially acceptable to dance by yourself in the park. It's not seen as very cool to, dress up as a Harry Potter character and cast spells at your friend. And once you get to a certain age, like maybe like 25 to 30, people say, what is bro doing at the club? Where is his wife and kids? Adults, we're not allowed to play anymore. And I think that playing is good for you. I think it's good for your brain. So let's just think about this for a second. So if you saw a kitten, a little tiny cat, playing in its litter with its brothers and sisters, having a good old time, jumping on each other, pawing at each other, trying to climb things, you think, yep, that thing is playing. This is how it learns. This is how it kind of makes sense of the world around it. It's doing things in a kind of low pressure situation. And then when the time comes, when it's in a similar situation in the future, but maybe it's in a less safe circumstance, it knows what to do. It knows what to expect. It goes, maybe if I smack this other cat, it's going to smack me back. And maybe if it's not its brothers and sisters, it might hurt. So it's learning. If I climb this and I fall off, it might hurt myself. You're playing to learn. That's how we learn, basically. But adults aren't allowed to play anymore. We're not allowed to kind of experiment and see what happens because you're meant to be serious. You're meant to have everything worked out. You're meant to have everything locked in. Therefore, you're not allowed to learn anymore, which is not really true. I barely knew anything when I turned 18. I barely know anything now. And it's kind of important to remember this. And I think with hustle culture, we've entangled the concept of fun with the concept of laziness, which you'll see is not really the case. A lot of things that are done just for fun have been kind of demonized. So let's say playing video games or going out partying. It's seen as bad. And don't get me wrong, it absolutely can be. If I played 20 ranked games of Overwatch in a row and ordered Uber Eats in and sat in my room and rotted, yeah, that's pretty bad. That's pretty lazy. That's pretty rotten. But that's not actually very fun. You see, we've entangled the fun and the laziness, but the lazy stuff isn't actually fun. Another one would be if we're, let's say, going out, like my other example. If you go out and have 20 beers and then throw up and then get an Uber home and make a mess of that and then sleep with someone you don't want to sleep with or something that sucks. But that's not fun. That's not play. That's kind of destructive behavior. So we need to kind of disentangle the fun and the destruction and disentangle the fun and the laziness and bring back the fun and the learning. So we need to find sustainable ways of playing rather than just destructive. I think our ways of having fun have kind of become very hedonistic. Work hard, play hard. Eating a whole cake, even though you're probably going to get a heart attack in 20 years, that's hedonism. You want pleasure at the cost of whatever. It's the sex, drugs, and rock and roll of the philosophy world. If our kitten from the previous example just was playing and jumped down the stairs head first and just bashed itself on the floor, yeah, that's hedonism, right? It's probably fun for about 3 seconds and then you're in a lot of pain and it's pretty destructive. So I wouldn't consider this as a good form of fun. So what would be sustainable play? Let me introduce you to Epicurianism. Now, this is named after the Greek philosopher Epicurus. I think it's a really, really good philosophy, and I think we need a bit more of it in our current society. But unfortunately, the word Epicurean has been kind of hijacked with another meaning. So if you look it up in the dictionary, it's someone who really, really loves food and wine. It's associated with people who really like the finer things in life. It's very fancy. The most expensive restaurant in my city is called the Epicurean. But that's actually not what Epicurus stood for, under my understanding. So let me go into, let's try and take it back. Let's go into what I think it means, and let's take the word back, because I think it's a really good philosophy, probably more useful than Stoicism for me at least. Epicureanism is similar to hedonism in the fact that it's pleasure is the end goal of your life, but it's a bit more wise, a bit more long-term looking, and it does involve self-sacrifice. You're having an apple today, not because it's the most delicious thing right now. Even apples are pretty good though, but it's no bacon, right? But you're having the apple instead because your long-term enjoyment of it is greater than the bacon. Sure, the bacon's going to be good today, but in 5 years, you'll be thanking yourself for having the apple, right? You're chasing the total pleasure of an action, and you're trying to be wise and work out what that is. Your entire well-being is more important than your short-term gratification. So let's tie it all together. If you're having fun in an Epicurean sense, that's not lazy. It's actually kind of a lot of effort. You're trying to have fun in a way that benefits your entire life in total, which is it's not easy. It's hard to make these judgment calls, which is probably the biggest flaw of it, but that's okay. We're going to do our best anyway. With the video game example, yeah, you play the video game, but you do a co-op game with someone who's important to you in your life. Therefore, you're strengthening your social bond, you're having a good time, and you feel good afterwards. You're not doing the destructive stuff, you're doing the good stuff. Maybe you go to the club and you have 3 drinks, and then you loosen up a bit, you chat to some people, you learn about some people's lives, maybe you make some connections, have a little bit of a dance, and loosen up a bit. Not destroying yourself the next day, but still playing. Maybe you learn chess. Maybe you learn chess, yeah? And so you can try to stave off that early onset dementia, because I think that like playing games as you get older, it's proven to, stop your brain from deteriorating. Yet, playing is bad as an adult. Remember that. Don't forget. You need to lock in. You need to hustle. You got to grind. Not really. Yeah, hustle culture, it's kind of tricked us into thinking fun is bad. You see these morning routines. It's like 4 a.m. wake up, 4:30 go to the gym, put your face in a bowl of sparkling ice water, blah, blah, blah. At what point do they say have a bit of fun? They don't do it. They've kind of, it doesn't fit into their plan. But I think playing is how we learn. And if you take the Epicurean approach to it and you do it safely and sustainably, it's going to help you grow so much. Not only that, but I've found that I do my best work when I'm in a good mood. Maybe it's because, I make YouTube videos doing gaming. So like being in a good mood is most of the job. But I find with pretty much anything, if you go into it feeling good, you're gonna do good work. So if you are a hustler, if you subscribe to hustle culture, which fair enough, you gotta chase the bag, you gotta, live in our society. Remember that if you have a bit of fun, the next day you're gonna do better work. I see so many people forcing themselves to just keep grinding away, despite the fact that they feel like complete shit. And they're not doing good work. Yes, hard work pays off, but good work, now that's the good stuff. So yeah, have some fun, not in a hedonistic way, but in an Epicurean way. Feel free to Google Epicurious if you want to have a bit more of a look at this. I think it's awesome. So yeah, I would recommend checking that out. Anyway, I'll see you next time, gamers.